Have you ever, just been lying there staring at the ceiling and wondered what happens after we die? Like, is that it? Is it just lights out? Or could there be something more?
It's a question that has haunted humanity for, well, probably as long as we've been around, hasn't it?
Totally. And today we are diving deep into that very question, looking specifically at near-death experiences, or NDEs for short.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, NDEs offer this sort of glimpse into, what might lie beyond.
Exactly. And our guide for this deep dive is the book La Supraconciencia Exist by Dr. Manuel Sansegarra and Juan Carlos Cebrian.
Ah, yes. Dr. Sansegarra, quite a remarkable figure.
He really is. I mean, not only is he a highly respected surgeon, talk about someone who's dealt with life and death on a daily basis, but he's also a pioneer in superconsciousness research.
A fascinating blend of scientific rigor and, well, a genuine fascination with the mysteries of consciousness.
Right. It's like he's got one foot firmly planted in the operating room and the other exploring the metaphysical.
And Juan Carlos Cebrian adds another important dimension to the book, doesn't he?
Absolutely. He brings in a range of different perspectives, which I think helps make the book accessible to a wider audience.
Keeps it grounded and relatable.
Totally. So think of this deep dive as our attempt to distill the most compelling insights from La Superconsciencia Existe. We're talking about NDEs, the nature of consciousness, all that good stuff. And what's really interesting is how the book balances scientific inquiry with, I'd say, a more spiritual exploration.
A delicate balance to strike, for sure.
For sure. So to kick things off, let's talk about these two authors. What exactly are their backgrounds, and how do they come together in this book?
Well, as you mentioned, Dr. Sansegarra has that extensive medical background.
Years in the operating room, right?
Right. But combined with his research into superconsciousness, it gives him, a very unique perspective on NDEs.
It's like he's seen both sides of the coin.
Right,
Right.
exactly. He's not just relying on anecdotal accounts. He's also deeply familiar with human physiology, with the limitations of our current scientific understanding.
So he's approaching NDEs from both a scientific and, well, I guess you could say a more experiential standpoint.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's where Juan Carlos Cebrian comes in. His contribution is vital in making the book, I think, more accessible and engaging for a wider readership.
It's like having two tour guides, each with their own expertise, showing you around this incredibly complex landscape.
I like that analogy.
So with that in mind, what are some of the core themes that La Superconsciencia Existe really delves into?
Well, at the heart of it, of course, are the near-death experiences themselves. Those often vivid and life-altering accounts from individuals who have been, well, on the brink of death and come back.
The stories can be pretty incredible, right?
Oh, absolutely. But the book goes beyond just recounting these experiences. It really grapples with the question of consciousness itself. What is it? Where does it come from? And is it really limited to our physical brains?
Those are some pretty big questions.
Huge questions. And that leads naturally to another major theme, which is the possibility of a postmortem existence. I mean, if consciousness isn't entirely dependent on the brain, what happens to it when the brain stops functioning?
It's a question that's been pondered for centuries.
For millennia, really. And then there's that fascinating attempt to bridge the gap between science and spirituality.
Which can be a bit of a minefield, right?
It can. But what the authors propose is that science and spirituality aren't necessarily at odds. They can actually complement each other, offer a more holistic understanding of reality.
So it's not a case of choosing one over the other, but rather seeing how they might work together.
Exactly. And that's where things get particularly interesting because they bring in quantum physics.
Quantum physics. Now we're really going down the rabbit hole.
I know, right? But it makes sense when you think about it. Quantum physics is all about challenging our conventional notions of reality.
Okay, so how do they actually build their case in the book? What kind of evidence do they present, and what methods do they use?
Well, a significant part of their approach is based on documented cases of NDEs. They analyze these cases meticulously, looking for recurring themes, patterns, and consistencies across different individuals and circumstances.
So they're not just dismissing these experiences as, hallucinations or wishful thinking.
No, not at all. They're treating them as valuable data points, as clues that might point towards a deeper understanding of consciousness.
And how does quantum physics fit into all of this?
Well, they draw on certain principles of quantum physics, such as non-locality, which is the idea that particles can be interconnected across vast distances.
Like they're somehow communicating with each other instantaneously?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they suggest that this might have implications for understanding how consciousness could exist, potentially, beyond the physical body.
Okay, so they're using some of the most mind-bending concepts in science to try and shed light on these profoundly personal experiences.
That's a good way to put it.
Now, the central question that seems to be driving this whole exploration, and I'm sure you'll agree, is whether consciousness is essentially bound to our physical form or if it has the potential to exist independently. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. That's the fundamental question that runs through the entire book. It's what the authors are grappling with, and it's the question they invite the reader to grapple with as well.
And one thing I really appreciate about the book is how it manages to explain these incredibly complex ideas in a way that's, well, relatively easy to understand. You don't need a PhD in physics to follow along.
That's one of the book's strengths, for sure. They avoid getting bogged down in overly technical jargon. It's written in a clear, accessible style, making it engaging for a wide range of readers.
So you don't need to be a quantum physics whiz to get something out of it.
Not all. You just need a curious mind and a willingness to consider some pretty mind-blowing possibilities.
Let's go back to that connection between science and spirituality for a moment. How do they envision those two worlds actually interacting and informing each other?
They propose that science, with its emphasis on observation and experimentation, can actually be used to investigate phenomena that have traditionally been relegated to the realm of spirituality.
So using the tools of science to explore the mysteries of the spiritual.
Exactly. But at the same time, they suggest that spiritual insights and accounts might offer valuable clues and perspectives that could, inspire new avenues of scientific inquiry.
It's like they're creating a sort of feedback loop between the two.
A very intriguing feedback loop.
Now, thinking about you, the listener, who exactly is this book written for? And why might you find this deep dive so fascinating?
Well, if you've ever pondered the big questions about life, death, and the nature of reality, then this book is definitely for you. It doesn't matter if you come from a scientific background, a spiritual background, or if you're just someone who's deeply curious about these mysteries.
So anyone who's ever looked up at the stars and wondered what it all means.
Precisely. And if you or someone you know has had a near-death experience, this book could offer a really valuable framework for understanding and processing that experience.
It could provide some context, some perspective.
Exactly. And if you're interested in quantum physics and how it might relate to consciousness, well, you'll find the book's exploration of that connection particularly thought-provoking.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. If we had to distill the essence of La Superconsciencia Existe into, say, a 60-second elevator pitch, what would be the key takeaway?
I'd say the key takeaway is this. The book explores NDEs and the nature of consciousness through both scientific and metaphysical lenses. It presents documented cases, draws on quantum physics, and ultimately challenges the idea that consciousness is solely a product of the brain.
And there's that beautiful quote from Dr. Sanz Segara, right, about consciousness being like an infinite ocean.
Yes. He says, La conciencia es como un océano infinito y nosotros somos solo gotas en su inmensidad. Consciousness is like an infinite ocean, and we are merely drops within its vastness.
A powerful image, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the book's invitation to reconsider our place in the universe, to question our assumptions about life and death, and to consider the possibility that consciousness might extend far beyond our physical bodies.
And this whole exploration of superconsciousness and, potential post-mortem existence, it's something that has captivated humanity for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. It's a theme that runs through countless myths, religions, and philosophical traditions.
And what's fascinating about La Supraconciencia Existe is how it brings a modern, scientifically informed perspective to this age-old conversation.
It's a new chapter in a very old story.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the lasting impression that La Superconsciencia Existe leaves you with?
It encourages you to think deeply about the nature of reality and your place within it. It suggests that our understanding of consciousness is still evolving and that there's much more to discover. And it offers a more expansive, maybe even more hopeful view of existence than we often consider.
A view that encompasses both the scientific and the spiritual.
Precisely.
So we've explored some pretty mind-bending concepts today, haven't we? We've talked about NDEs, the nature of consciousness, and that really big question of whether consciousness can exist independently of the physical body.
And La Supraconciencia Existe offers a really compelling perspective on all of that.
It does, and it leaves you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder. If consciousness truly is like an infinite ocean, as the book suggests, how might that change your understanding of yourself and your place in the universe? How might it reshape your perception of reality?
Those are great questions to reflect on.
They really are. And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, we encourage you to explore these topics further. You can check out La Superconsciencia Existe itself, or delve into the vast amount of research out there on NDEs and quantum physics. There's a whole universe of fascinating information waiting to be discovered.
A universe within, perhaps.
Perhaps. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.